Hi everyone, how are you all? Ela unnaru andaru? I hope everybody is fine. My name is Lydia and I am going to teach zoology, one of the chapters for you. ఈ రోజు నేను పిక్ చేసుకున్న టాపిక్ అమ్మ హ్యూమన్ ఫిజియాలజీ నుంచి రైట్ సెకండ్ చాప్టర్ బ్రీదింగ్ అండ్ ఎక్స్చేంజ్ ఆఫ్ గ్యాసెస్ నేను ఈరోజు టీచ్ చేయబోతున్నాను అండ్ దట్ టు ఐఎమ్ గోయింగ్ టు గివ్ యూ ఇంట్రడక్షన్ అండ్ సమ్ పార్ట్ ఆఫ్ ద చాప్టర్. As you all know, human physiology is very important and most of the questions come from human physiology kabatti I thought of starting this topic for you all, and I'll be talking in both languages, Telugu and English rendu use chesi I'll be explaining, and as I explain and write points on the board I want you all to take it on. Aithe let's get into the topic amma. So you can see, look at the topic, it is breathing and exchange of gases, right? Right. So to begin with, we'll start with the basic question. What is respiration? This is the basic question kada. Breathing ante enti, respiration ante enti anedi first we should know. So can you all think about what is respiration? When we say respiration, the only point which comes to our mind is respiration is inhalation of oxygen and exhalation of carbon dioxide. Inhalation ante entama, taking the air in. What air do we take? We take oxygen. Exhalation is we give out carbon dioxide. Now దీన్ని ఇంకా వేరే విధానంలో కూడా we can define. How can we define respiration? We can define it in this way, or the other way is it is a catabolic reaction. It's a catabolic reaction to release energy. So ikkada we should be knowing what is catabolic reaction and why do we need energy and why do we need oxygen here. So catabolic reactions, anabolic reactions మీరు ఇంతకు ముందే నేర్చుకున్నారు. What is catabolic reactions? As you all know, breaking down. Catabolic reactions అంటే breaking down of macromolecules to micromolecules. అయితే ఇక్కడ చూడండి, okay, so if you can see breaking down of macromolecules ante enti, macromolecules ante we all know macromolecules are large sized molecules. So I'm just drawing a picture of how these large size molecules look like. For example, large size molecules, from where do we get it? When we are consuming food like carbohydrates, like proteins, when we are consuming it, food like rice or chapati or whatever is our daily diet that we take, those all have macromolecules. These macromolecules cannot be absorbed directly by our digestive system, so they have to be broken down into simple molecules. So when carbon dioxide, let's say this is carbohydrate. If carbohydrate, which is a macromolecule, is broken down, what do we get? We get simple micromolecules which can be absorbed by digestive system. So these are micromolecules which are nothing but glucose molecules, let's say, plus energy is released. This is what is happening during respiration. Now here, where do we see oxygen? Oxygen plays a role here. Oxygen helps in breaking down macromolecules that we are consuming, and it helps in breaking down of these molecules into simple absorbable molecules and also releasing energy. So that is why we respire. Not only that, once the oxygen reaches the cells or tissues, the cells will use up the energy. This energy edaithe which is produced, actually all this energy is produced in the cell only. This energy is utilized by the cell for all its metabolic activities. Along with that, carbon dioxide is released. When the cell is using up the food and the energy, carbon dioxide gas is released. Carbon dioxide gas shouldn't remain in our body for a longer time. Enduku ante, why should carbon dioxide does not or should not remain in the tissues or the cell for a longer time is, carbon dioxide, as you all know, is picked up by our blood vessels. Blood vessels lo enter ayi, you all know it, blood has plasma. What is plasma made up of, everyone? You all know it. Plasma, 55% of the blood has plasma, and plasma is made up of around 96% of water. Water and carbon dioxide, they mix up to form carbonic acid. Carbonic acid is a dangerous, compound which has to come out from our body. It's like poison. So for that reason, carbon dioxide has to leave our body as soon as possible. So now you see, why are we respiring? Why are we breathing? For two things: for oxygen, so that this oxygen can be used for breaking down of macromolecules. Aithe manam breaking down catabolic process ane word use cheyochama, oxidation of food material ani kuda use cheyochu. Oxidation ante breaking down of food molecules in the presence of oxygen, as well as taking the carbon dioxide from the tissues to outside. That is the main purpose of respiration. Okay, so this is all about respiration. Let's see, there are other terms that we should also be learning. What are those other terms? So respiration is catabolic process అని నేర్చుకున్నాం కదా. How do you define then breathing? Breathing, as I told you, is otherwise we can define it inhaling or inhale of oxygen and exhaling of carbon dioxide simultaneously. At the same time, both things, one enters and the other exits. Breathing ki, there's another term, amma. We can also use the word ventilation. Ventilation we can use, or you can use another word, external respiration. I want you all to remember other words. Endukante manaki NEET lo they can ask you what is breathing, they can ask you what is external respiration, they can ask you what is respiration. All of them, you can see these are other names. Breathing ante enti, ventilation ante enti, external respiration ante enti. It's the same meaning. Now why are we calling external respiration ani enduku antunnam? Endukante this exchange of gases, where is this exchange of gases happening? Can you tell me? Or exchange of oxygen and carbon dioxide is happening at the alveoli level. Ante lungs level lo exchange jarugutundi. The exchange is not happening inside the cell where the energy is produced. So external respiration ante the place where exchange of gases is taking place other than the place where energy is produced. Ante ఇది సెల్ ఉంది, సెల్ లోపల ఎనర్జీ ప్రొడ్యూస్ అవుతుందమ్మా. గ్యాసెస్ ఎక్స్చేంజ్ ఎక్కడ జరుగుతుంది? అవుట్ సైడ్ ద సెల్ ఆర్ నియర్ ద ఆల్వియోలై ఏరియా, బయట జరుగుతుంది. కాబట్టి వీఆర్ కాలింగ్ దిస్ యాజ్ బ్రీదింగ్ యాజ్ ఆల్సో ఎక్స్టర్నల్ రెస్పిరేషన్ ఆర్ ventilation. So you should know the difference. Okay, now what is, there's another term which is called internal respiration. Internal respiration ante entante the production of energy inside the cell is called internal respiration. Deenni manamu internal respiration antamama. Ante internal respiration lo em jarugutundi? The micromolecules are breaking down and energy is released. So internal respiration is also called cellular respiration. ఎందుకు cellular respiration అంటున్నాం? Because the respiration or the energy is produced inside the cell కాబట్టి we are calling it cellular respiration. ఇవన్నీ terms actually you have learnt in your lower classes. Now you have to recollect all those definitions and put it in your mind so that ఎక్కడి నుంచైనా నీట్ క్వశ్చన్ అడిగినా you should be able to answer it very clearly. Okay, so this is all about external respiration and internal respiration. Let's talk about the next part. So external అయిపోయింది, internal respiration అయిపోయింది. Next we learn about, see there are two types. When we are saying respiration, they are of two types. One is aerobic and the other is anaerobic. ఇది కూడా మీరు ఇంతకు ముందు you have learnt in your lower classes. What is aerobic respiration? What is anaerobic respiration? Now whatever we discussed till now comes under aerobic respiration. అంటే ఏంటమ్మా? The macromolecules are broken down into micromolecules and releasing energy in the presence of oxygen inside the cell. సో ఇన్ ద ప్రెసెన్స్ ఆఫ్ ఆక్సిజన్ జరుగుతుంది కాబట్టి ఈ రెస్పిరేషన్ ని మనము ఏరోబిక్ రెస్పిరేషన్ అంటున్నాము, రైట్? సో లెట్స్ సీ. సో దిస్ ఇస్ వాట్ వీ హ్యావ్ లెర్న్ టిల్ నౌ. యాక్చువల్లీ దీని రియాక్షన్ ఒకసారి చూద్దాం. సో C6H12O6 ప్లస్ వాటర్ ప్లస్ ఆక్సిజన్ గివింగ్ ఓకే ఎవ్రీవన్. సో external respiration. Then what is internal respiration? Internal respiration is the production of energy inside the cell. Baita em jarugutundi? What is external respiration? External respiration is only exchange of gases is happening, whereas in internal respiration the energy is released. At the internal respiration we can also call it as cellular respiration. Okay, అయితే సెల్యులార్ రెస్పిరేషన్ అనొచ్చు, ఆర్ యూ కెన్ కాల్ ఇట్ యాజ్ ఇంటర్నల్ రెస్పిరేషన్. ఓకే, సో హియర్ external respiration we see gaseous exchange, and since it is happening outside the cell, అంటే ఎక్కడైతే ఎనర్జీ ప్రొడ్యూస్ అవుతుందో అక్కడ జరగకుండా ఎక్స్చేంజ్ ఆఫ్ గ్యాసెస్ ఇస్ హ్యాపెనింగ్ అవుట్సైడ్ ద సెల్ కాబట్టి దీన్ని మనం ఎక్స్టర్నల్ రెస్పిరేషన్ అంటున్నాము. ఇంటర్నల్ రెస్పిరేషన్ మీన్స్ the energy is produced inside the cell, so you can also call it as cellular respiration. Now let's see few more points on respiration, right? Respiration is actually divided into two types. ఇది మీరు ఆల్రెడీ మీ లోవర్ క్లాసెస్లో నేర్చుకున్నారు. Respiration is divided into two types. One is aerobic and the other is anaerobic. ఇప్పుడు నేను చెప్పిందంతా it comes under aerobic respiration. What is aerobic respiration? The catabolic process or breaking down of macromolecules in the presence of oxygen is aerobic respiration. And since it is happening inside the cell, we are calling cellular respiration also. Now, what is anaerobic respiration? The breaking down of molecules, macromolecules in the absence of oxygen is anaerobic respiration. Let's see the reaction once. Aerobic respiration, the reaction chuddam amma. So, C6H12O6 plus water plus oxygen gives carbon dioxide plus water and plus energy. This is the reaction for aerobic respiration. And how many molecules of energy is released? 36 to 38 ATP molecules are released during aerobic respiration. Now you all know ATP is the form of energy. That is what is produced. When we say energy, it is ATP molecules which are produced in our body, right? So you can see what is this C6H12O6? This is the glucose molecule. Right? How are these glucose molecules produced? When the food what we are eating is broken down, glucose is produced. This glucose in the presence of water and oxygen, and that too if you want me to balance it, I can balance it. right? We get energy. This energy, what do we do with this energy? We use this energy for all metabolic processes. మన బాడీలో ఏవైతే యాక్టివిటీస్ జరుగుతాయో, రెస్పిరేషన్ అండ్ దెన్ ఎక్స్క్రీషన్, రీప్రొడక్షన్, ద కార్డియాక్ ఫంక్షన్, ఎవ్రీథింగ్ నీడ్స్ ఎనర్జీ. నాట్ ఓన్లీ దట్, డే టు డే యాక్టివిటీస్ కోసం మనకు ఎనర్జీ అవసరం. దట్ ఎనర్జీ ఈస్ గివెన్ బై దిస్ ప్రాసెస్. నౌ యూ మస్ట్ ఆల్సో రిమెంబర్ that aerobic respiration is a complete breakdown, right? Just a minute. Okay. So as I told you, this reaction, it's a complete breakdown. Complete breakdown. అంటే ఏంటి కంప్లీట్ బ్రేక్ డౌన్ అంటే దీస్ మాలిక్యూల్స్ ఆర్ కంప్లీట్లీ బ్రోకన్ డౌన్, మొత్తం బ్రోకన్ డౌన్ అయిపోయి ఎనర్జీ ఇస్ ప్రొడ్యూస్. దెన్ వాట్ ఈస్ ఎనరోబిక్ రెస్పిరేషన్? యాజ్ ఐ టోల్డ్ యూ, ఎనరోబిక్ రెస్పిరేషన్ హ్యాపెన్స్ ఇన్ ది absence of air, in the absence of air or oxygen. అంటే ఆక్సిజన్ లేదు ఈ రియాక్షన్ లో. సో యూ కెన్ టేక్ ద సేమ్ రియాక్షన్ C6H12O6. Now this happens in the absence of oxygen, so there is no oxygen. C3H6O3, and this is lactic acid. Lactic acid plus ATP or energy, and how many molecules? Only 2 molecules of ATP is produced. And what is this? You all know it, glucose, and this is lactic acid. Now lactic acid is the product which is produced when this reaction is happening in the absence of oxygen, and it is incomplete breakdown. Aithe difference entante aerobic and anaerobic respiration ki ikkada energy molecules 36 to 38, here only 2 molecules, means very less amount of ATP or energy is being produced. Who shows this anaerobic respiration? You can take this example. Anaerobic respiration, mana body, sometimes it shows anaerobic respiration, and yeast is the most famous example under anaerobic respiration, right? Now let's get into the next topic of this chapter, and that is, what are all the respiratory structures which are in the animal kingdom? So we are going to learn respiratory structures or organs in animal kingdom. Now let me tell you, all of you, physiology law, in the beginning of the chapter you have introduction and then you have respiratory. For example, each chapter lo respiratory structures of animal kingdom. Ante right from invertebrates to vertebrates, what are their respiratory structures? Then when you learn about body fluids lo kuda introduction lo circulatory system gurinchi examples unnayamma. So every physiology chapter lo introduction part, they are going to tell you what are all the structures in the animal kingdom. Our examples you have to learn it for any cost, because in Neet they are definitely going to ask you questions in any form. Match the following type lo adugochu, direct adugochu, statement form lo adugochu, but you shouldn't avoid it. Introduction e kada ide avasrama ani anukokandi, because I told you before also, and I always tell my students, for Neet you shouldn't leave anything. Every nook and corner of the page you have to read and you have to remember and you have to by heart, except the page numbers, which I always tell, everything you have to read. So let's see what are the respiratory structures in animal kingdom, right from invertebrates. Okay, so ikkada we will write the phylum, and here we will write the organs. Okay, so we'll begin with the lowest phylum, and that is, you can see Porifera, Nidaria. What are their respiratory structures? Alochinchandi, what are their respiratory structures? How do they respire? Now you all know Porifera and Nidaria are the most simple animals in the animal kingdom. So they don't have a system, they have simple organs. Entadi body surface. So they respire through body surface. Okay. Next, you take earthworm. Earthworm comes under annelids. Annelids, and you take frog. Frog comes under amphibia. How does earthworms respire? They respire with the help of their skin or cuticle. Meeku gurtunte, you have learnt in earthworm that the body of the earthworm is moist. It is covered with cuticle and it is moist. Why do you think it is moist? Moist nature ఉన్నందుకే exchange of gases అనేది జరుగుతుంది. There is no respiratory structure in earthworm. The body surface only will help, or the cuticle will help in respiration. Alane frog lo if you see, skin acts as the major respiratory structure. Actually, frog, when you are studying, you'll come across frog respires through skin, it respires through lungs, it respires through buccopharyngeal cavity and nerchukuntam. But among these three, 85% of the respiration happens through the skin, or we call it as cutaneous respiration. So ikkada skin. Then we come to arthropods. Arthropoda. And the famous arthropod type study మనం ఏం చేసినామమ్మా, కాక్రోచ్ గురించి చదువుకున్నాం. Then we have mollusca and also fishes. Can you guess what is their respiratory structures? I guess you have already guessed it, and it is gills. As you all know, aquatic organisms, they have gills as their respiratory structures. అయితే మీరు ఆర్థ్రోపోడ్లో చదువుకొని ఉంటారు, గిల్స్ అంటే బుక్ గిల్స్ అని నేర్చుకున్నాము, ఆర్ సింప్లీ గిల్స్ వీ హ్యావ్ లర్న్డ్, రైట్? ఇన్ మొలస్కా ఆల్సో గిల్స్ ఆర్ ద స్ట్రక్చర్స్ విచ్ హెల్ప్ ఇన్ రెస్పిరేషన్. అండ్ ఆల్సో ఫిషెస్. Fishes, ఒకవేళ మీకు గుర్తుంటే, we have two categories of fishes, chondrichthyes and ostrichthyes. Both the type of fishes breathe to gills. So this is about aquatic. Then we come to the chordates. Now chordates lo ఏవేవి ఉన్నాయి? Reptilia, aves, which are birds, and mammals which are, we come under this category. How do you think we respire? We respire through lungs. So these are all the respiratory structures, right from invertebrate to vertebrate phylum. As I told you, this whole table is very important. మీరు వెరీ ఇంపార్టెంట్ అంటే స్టార్ వేసుకుంటారు కదా, స్టార్ ఓర్ బాక్స్లో పెడతారు. వెరీ వెరీ ఇంపార్టెంట్. ప్లీజ్ రైట్ ఇట్ డౌన్ and always remember to go through this table compulsorily. Okay, so this is all about the respiratory structures. Now let's get into okay, we'll take a new page. Now we'll get into human yes, now we'll get into human respiratory system. Okay, we'll get into human respiratory system. Let's write the flow chart. Now this flow chart also is very important. Manam already did 10th class lo meer neerchukone untaru. So we'll just go through the flow chart of respiratory system. So how does it begin with? It begins with external nostrils, or I'll write it from here. So it begins with external nostrils. You can write down this flow chart because this will be very useful for you. External nostrils, they open to nasal chambers. Nasal chambers will open to internal nostrils or internal nares ani kuda antamama. Then we get into here pharynx. Pharynx leads into larynx, and larynx leads into trachea. Trachea divides into bronchi, then bronchi into, so you can say bronchi, then we can write primary bronchi, secondary bronchi, tertiary bronchi. Then we have bronchioles. Then here we can write initial bronchioles. I hope everybody is writing initial bronchioles. Then we have terminal bronchioles. Then we have respiratory bronchioles. Then alveolar duct, which opens into atria, which opens into alveoli. So everyone, I want you to write this flowchart. It goes like this, and finally the alveoli. So all of you begin with external nostrils. I'll quickly explain the pathway of air. This is how the air travels from outside and reaches the alveoli. Okay. So first chuddamama. External nostrils. You all know it. Where are our nostrils? Here. And you can see in our face we have the external nostrils. Where are they located? Upper lip. So we call it as nasal chamber, and down we have buccal cavity. Nasal chamber inka buccal cavity ki maddalo there is a hard palate. You can put your tongue up and touch it. You can see there is something hard which is dividing your nose and buccal cavity, which is called the hard palate. The hard palate divides the face into two chambers. One is through which the air enters, which we call it as nasal chambers, and one is the buccal cavity through which we take our food. At the nasal chamber kante mundu, we have a pair of nostrils. You all know it. Through the nostrils, the air enters or oxygen enters. So we have a pair of nostrils here. Then the oxygen enters the nasal chamber. Nasal chamber lo emunnayama. What do we find? Usually we find hair, we find mucus, we have other glands also. Now, what is the function of hair and mucus glands? As you all know, when the air enters the nasal chamber, the air is filtered. Now there's a lot of dust outside. What does this hair do or mucus do? It will trap all the dust material. Dust material kavochu inkedana harmful material which has entered the hair, it gets trapped here. So what do we have? Here we have hair and mucus glands. Okay. Then not only mucus glands are present in the nasal chamber, actually the entire respiratory tract is lined by mucus cells. They produce mucus. You all know it. Mucus is a sticky, liquid. So, this sticky liquid anedi, you can see the entire respiratory tract. It traps all the harmful material or dust. Then from here it enters the internal nares. Ante nasal chamber taravata kuda there are two small openings. Here also we see two small openings through which the air now enters into pharynx. Now pharynx is actually a common place for our buccal cavity, a common place anochu or a common chamber for our buccal cavity, common chamber for our nasal cavity. So nasal chamber nunchi pharynx will open, and buccal cavity also opens to into pharynx. So common it's a common area, right? So this actually I wanted to draw. Okay, let me show you how this pharynx, as I told you, it's a common chamber gada. So let me quickly show you. Now this is, and this both here and here, and this is our trachea. Okay, so this is our trachea, which is our windpipe, and this is our larynx. I'm sorry, this is our esophagus. Okay, so pharynx, then you can see the pharyngeal area. This is common. This is the nasal chamber or nasal cavity, which opens into pharynx area, and this is the buccal cavity which opens into the pharynx area. Okay, then after this you can see there are two tubes here, esophagus and trachea. So this is a common chamber here. After this we have the next structure, and that is larynx, and the larynx opens into trachea. So ikkadaka it's a common chamber for both the pipes, for food and for air. Ikkad nunchi we have larynx and other structures. Okay, so let's go back. Yes, so it's a common chamber, and then we get into the next area, that is larynx. As you all know, larynx is called the sound box. Why do we call it sound box? ఈ క్వశ్చన్ నీట్ లో ఎన్నోసార్లు అడిగినరమ్మా. వాట్ ఈస్ లారింగ్స్? వాట్ ఈస్ ద ఫంక్షన్ ఆఫ్ లారింగ్స్? ఇట్స్ సౌండ్ బాక్స్, ఆర్ ఇట్ ఈస్ ద ప్లేస్ వేర్ సౌండ్ ఇస్ ప్రొడ్యూస్డ్. లెట్ మీ యాడ్ వన్ పాయింట్. ఇక్కడ దే ఆర్ 9 cartilages. These 9 cartilages, are nothing but they are forming vocal cords, and vocal cords help in sound production. So just to give you an information, let me give you the names of all these 9 cartilages also. Okasari 9 cartilages kuda meeku I will let you know. So it starts with thyroid, cricoid, please write it down, arytenoid, sorry, I'll write it again, cricoid, arytenoid, and cartilage of Santorini. Then we have epiglottis, and then we have cuneiform. These are all 9 cartilages. This is unpaired, this is unpaired, these are all paired. So, ఇది కూడా గుర్తుపెట్టుకోండమ్మా. What are these 3? Just in case if you want to know what are those 9 cartilages ante, these are the 9 cartilages through which the sound box is formed. And why are we calling sound box? These cartilages help in formation of vocal cords which produce the sound actually. Right? So let's get back. Larynx will open into, the next one is trachea. Now as you all know, trachea is what we are interested in today's class, which is the windpipe. Now trachea contain, in between this larynx and trachea, we find another structure, we call it glottis. I'm sure you all know it. Right? Glottis ni cover cheyadaniki, the larynx meeda, the part is called glottis. Glottis paina, there is a flap like structure which is made up of cartilage, and that structure is like a lid, which we are calling it as epiglottis. I'm sure me andarki you know what is this epiglottis. What is this epiglottis, all of you? Epiglottis is actually covering this glottis or the opening of larynx. Now next question, why is this epiglottis present? As you all know, while we are eating food or taking the food in, the food shouldn't enter the windpipe. As you all know, windpipe and the food pipe, esophagus, are close to each other. So there is every chance that the food enters into the windpipe. Adi kaakunda aapadaniki we have this epiglottis, which is a lid like structure which is made up of cartilage, right? So this is an important point too. Already they have asked in Neet and they can ask again. It enters into trachea. The larynx leads into trachea. If you have seen, I guess you have seen the structure of our respiratory tract and the respiratory system of humans. If you've seen it, the trachea is not a smooth structure. Ippudaina observe chesara? How is trachea? The pipe is not smooth, but there are certain rings on it. So let's quickly draw. You can also draw along with me, everyone. Please draw along with me quickly. So these are our 2 lungs, and this is our diaphragm. No. Okay, and then we have great. So if you observe, see, this is the epiglottis here. Here we have the epiglottis, and this is the trachea area. Now trachea area is a pipe which is not smooth, but it has all, like this, lines on it. What are these lines? These are nothing but cartilage. And what are these cartilage made up of? Hyaline cartilage. If you remember, we have learned 3 different types of cartilages: fibrous cartilage, elastic cartilage, hyaline cartilage. This trachea has this hyaline cartilage which is in the form of C-shaped rings. C-shaped ring anochama or incomplete rings. How many rings are there? Around 16 to 20 rings, incomplete or C-shaped rings are present on the trachea. Now the next question is, why does trachea have these rings? These rings will help in preventing collapsing. Ante enti collapsing ante ee rings are like support. Support lekapothe the trachea will come close and the air cannot get in. So in order to give a support to the trachea, these rings are present. Now the next question is, why are they not complete? Why is it C-shaped or incomplete? And the answer is, see, I have a bottle with me. Let's say if this is trachea venkalane esophagus untadamma. So since esophagus is covering backside, only half of the rings ila ఉంటుంది. Because backside what do we have? We have esophagus which is covering. So we have C-shaped ring. Now this point also is very important for Neet. What is the function of these C-shaped cartilaginous rings? They prevent collapsing. Okay, so let's go back. So that's all about trachea that we've learned. Remember how many C-shaped rings are there, what is the cartilage made up of, right? And what is the function of these cartilaginous rings? Then the trachea divides into two branches. What are those branches? They are called left and right bronchi. Where does trachea divide into or branch out into bronchi is at fifth thoracic vertebrae. You all should remember this point also, which is very important and would be asked in Neet. Trachea ekkada divide aitundamma? Fifth thoracic vertebrae degara. It branches out into two sub branches or two tubes, which we call it as left bronchi and right bronchi. Ippudu ikkada picture nenu draw chesinanu kada. Here is the place where it divides. So this is left and right bronchi. This is right side and this is left side. So trachea, it divides at fifth thoracic vertebrae. So as I told you, trachea is not smooth. It has these rings which are made up of hyaline cartilage. Fifth thoracic vertebrae degara, you will see the trachea is dividing into two branches. And what do we call this branch? We call this as bronchi. So left bronchi and right. So this is right side and this is left. So this is right bronchi and left bronchi. Then each bronchi will again divide into primary. So this becomes primary bronchi. Primary bronchi will again divide to secondary bronchi. Secondary bronchi will divide to tertiary. Tertiary to initial bronchioles. As we see in the flow chart here, if you can see, yes, so you can see primary, secondary, tertiary, initial bronchioles, then terminal bronchioles, then they will divide into respiratory bronchioles, then alveolar duct, atria and alveoli. So finally, you will see here inside, if this is the branch, you can see these branching out and finally you will see atria, or I'm sorry, not atria, alveoli, which is the actual place at which respiration or exchange of gases takes place. Let's go back to the next point. 1 minute. Okay. Now, if you can see, I have written two parts here, the conducting part and respiratory part. Right from external nostrils to terminal bronchioles, this area is called conducting part. Now, what do you mean by conducting part? Conducting part means this is the place where the gases will enter and exit. Here, no exchange of gases will happen. Conducting is just the air passes into the respiratory tract area. Now, what is the function of conducting part, students? Just remember, this is the area where the dust is trapped, the air is filtered, And the next is the air is humidified. Now, what do you mean by humidified? You know that the air outside is the temperature. Depending upon the temperature, the air can be much warm, or the air can be much cold. Now, to bring back the air to normal, to our body temperature, what happens is, in this conducting part, the air is humidified, which means the air's temperature is brought back to our temperature. To warm up the air is the function of this conducting part. Now the next question is, why should be the air be warmed? Baita unna temperature lo unna air mana respiratory pathway lo enter aithe em avutadi ane question we will get in mind. Now the answer is, if that air, if the cold air or hot air enters our body, it can damage this respiratory tract. Or if dry air is entering into our respiratory tract, it can damage all these organs or parts. So that's why when the air is entering, the function of the conducting part is to lower the temperature. Humidifying ante the mucus cells which are lining these areas will add water in the form of water vapor, thereby bringing the temperature of the air to match our body temperature, or warming the air. That's the function. And also filtering. All the dust which is entering our respiratory tract is removed by this conducting part. Then what happens in the respiratory part? You can see here respiratory bronchioles to alveoli. This is called respiratory part, and respiratory part is the place where exchange of gases actually happens. As you all have learned right from your lower classes, who are alveoli? Alveoli are the structural and functional unit of our lungs. Ante gas exchange, oxygen and carbon dioxide are exchanged at this point. One more point I want to highlight here, everybody. From trachea till initial bronchioles, all this area will have those C-shaped. So alveoli are called the structural and functional unit of the lungs, because at the alveoli structures only, which are vascularized sac-like structures in which exchange of gases will happen. Now let's learn the structure of the lung. I have taken the same picture from our NCERT textbook. So if you all can see, there are other parts also. Ikkada chudandi, epiglottis undamma. Epiglottis is the structure which is covering the glottis. Glottis is the opening of the larynx. Then you see larynx, then trachea, and you can also see the rings on the trachea. Then the trachea is dividing into bronchioles and bronchi, bronchioles and all, and then finally it is ending to alveoli. If you can look at the structure here, it looks like a tree. So this area is also called as respiratory tree. Let's learn the structure of the lungs. As you all know, how many pair of lungs do we have? We have one pair of lungs situated in the thoracic cavity. As you all know, lungs are well protected by two important membranes. The two membranes which are surrounding the lungs are called as pleural membrane. If you can see, yellow color structure highlight ayundo, those are pleural membrane. How many pleural membrane do we have? We have two pleural membranes. There is one outer membrane and there is one inner membrane. Outer and inner membrane has a fluid which is called as pleural fluid. You can see here it is given, it is called pleural fluid. What is the function of pleural fluid? Pleural fluid reduces the friction. And when lungs are expanding, when they are contracting and relaxing, this fluid will protect the lungs from external damage. Not only external damage or internal damage. Basically, it reduces friction and protects the lungs from any kind of injury, let it be outside or inside injury. So those are pleural fluids and the pleural fluid and their function. Then if you see, there are other structures also. You can see this is usually this is called the right side and this is the left side of the lung. You can see there is a notch here, a curve. This notch is called cardiac notch. Notch ante ఇలా ఒక డిప్రెషన్ ఉందమ్మా, దాన్ని మనము కార్డియాక్ నాచ్ అంటాం. Now what is the significance of this notch? This is the place where heart is situated. I guess you might have learnt in your lower classes, one lung is little you can see smaller compared to the other one. Which one? The left lung is little smaller compared to right, because the left lung has to accommodate our heart, right? And this area where the heart is situated, this area is called media sternum. I'll write it again. The place present between two lungs, it is called media sternum space. Media means something in between. So in between two lungs, our heart is situated. Now this entire lungs are present in a airtight chamber. Now what is this airtight chamber? Airtight chamber is nothing but rib cage. So let's see how this rib cage is formed quickly. So you have uh, anterior side, posterior side, and then dorsal side and ventral side. We are seeing how rib cage is formed. Rib cage is also called as thoracic cage. Anterior side, what we have is neck, and we have our collarbone. Right? Posterior side, we have diaphragm. Then dorsal side, we have vertebral column. Ventral side, we have sternum. All these four structures form a cage which we call rib cage. This is ventral side. Ventral side, we have a sternum bone here to which ribs are attached. So you can see sternum plus ribs are attached. Then dorsal side, we have vertebral column to which front side ribs and back side ribs are attached to the vertebral column. Down below, we have a domed shaped structure which is called diaphragm, and on the upper side we have collarbone. Here is the collarbone. So all these structure together make a tight chamber which is called as thoracic chamber. And it is said that the volume of the thoracic chamber, if the volume of the thoracic chamber changes, even the volume of the lungs also will change. Ante entama? Let's say if this is the thoracic cavity. To the thoracic cavity or the thoracic chamber, rib cage, the lungs are very close. Now this is rib cage or thoracic cage, and these are lungs. They are so close to each other that any change in the volume of the rib cage or thoracic cage, the volume of the lungs also will change. Obviously, lungs gaani expand aite, thoracic cage kuda expand avutadi. Lungs gaani contract avute, thoracic chamber or this thoracic cage also will decrease in volume. So that is how, all these structures are related to our human respiration. Then let me add how many alveoli are present. If you get in your mind, please remember there are about 300 million alveoli total present in both the lungs. So this point you can add it to, because this point is not mentioned anywhere, so you can add it. And then let me add one more point on alveoli. Inside the alveoli, there are certain, now this is the alveoli. Inside the alveoli, there are some cells which are called pneumatocytes. So just for information, you can keep it in mind. These pneumatocytes also produce a protein called as lecithin. This lecithin will help in preventing collapsing of the alveoli. Ante alveoli em pan chestadi, you all know it, it helps in exchange of gases. This lecithin will prevent the collapsing of alveoli. So this is all about human respiratory system parts. In the next class, we will learn about mechanism of breathing. Thank you.